The Artist is pretty fun. This is the 13th episode of the third season of The Golden Girls. This is, of course, directed by Terry Hughes, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. And it starts off with Sophia coming in from bingo, and she has no clothes on under her coat. And it's a pretty interesting anecdote, but my favourite part was when Rose asks her why she's wearing this heavy coat in the house, and Sophia stands up and doesn't explain anything. She just opens the coat. And she walks away, and Rose says to Dorothy, was Sophia naked just now, or does her dress really need ironing? It was a very strong start to what is ultimately a really strong episode. Blanche then comes in with Laszlo, played by Tony J. He's a sculptor from the gallery, from the museum, and he's actually asked Blanche to sit for him to pose nude so he can do some sketches of her so he can then turn it into a sculpture. And then Sophia pulls some pranks. I'm not a huge fan of pranks and practical jokes. I didn't mind that part of the narrative, but there was one time where I really laughed out loud, and I'll talk about that when we get there. She's doing this to practice getting her own back for the dress incident, and then Laszlo comes over, and he tells Rose he's actually thinking about sketching somebody else to capture a more innocent and naive quality, and he does end up asking Rose. And Rose initially doesn't want to do this because she doesn't think it will be fair to Blanche, but then Blanche says some insulting things, so Rose, without Blanche knowing, agrees to sit for Laszlo. A little while later, Blanche then comes in, and she's found what she believes are Laszlo's sketches of her. And she's got some very insulting things to say about them, but of course we, the viewer, come to the assumption that these are actually sketches of Rose. And Blanche is insulting these sketches of Rose, and Rose ends up confessing, saying they're sketches of me. And they end up saying some really nasty stuff to each other. It's really uncomfortable. And then Dorothy comes in from the kitchen, and I love how this bit played out because they tell her they're arguing because they don't know who Laszlo is going to choose. And without any real explanation, Dorothy just says, "It's going to be me," and holds up a key. It's quite dramatic. I like it. And then Rose responds, "The woman you saw in those horrible drawings must have been Dorothy." I don't think she meant it nastily, but it was definitely very funny. And they continue arguing about this, and they're arguing in the kitchen, and this is the bit where I kind of laughed out loud at one of Sophia's practical jokes because it was just so perfectly timed. Blanche is saying how Laszlo will clearly choose somebody with the most grace, the most style, the most femininity. She sits down on a whoopee cushion right at that perfect time, and I just thought it was very, very well executed. And they decide to go and see him, and they do, and they go to his studio, and it's a really nice set design, really like it. And it's quite an interesting scene because it's still unclear what's going to happen, and he explains to them that he has enough sketches now of all three of them that he doesn't need any of them to sit for him anymore. And he will make his decision based on the sketches, and they'll only find out who he has chosen once they reveal the sculpture. And I kind of figured out what he was going to do, but I didn't realise how beautiful it would be. We then cut immediately to the unveiling. Really nice location. The costumes are stunning, particularly Blanche's. I really liked Blanche's outfit. I like anything that sparkles. Sophia does some more practical jokes, and then they unveil the sculpture. And I will say it didn't look like any of them. And there is a reason for this, because Laszlo explains that he sculpted all of their best features to create, and I quote, one perfect lady. I didn't like that necessarily. I don't like the phrase that he was basically saying, on your own, you're not perfect, but together you are. And obviously nobody is perfect, but it wasn't very nice, a very nice way to explain that. But then he said, you complement each other very well indeed, which I loved. That's the bit that I thought was really beautiful. Not only is he saying all of these qualities together make a beautiful sculpture, but as a friendship group, everything comes together. And that is just so, so gorgeous. And then we find out that he's gay. So none of them had a chance with him anyway. And Sophia's response to that is, how can you blame him? The man has looked at the three of you naked for a month. And then we end with Sophia doing more practical jokes on Dorothy. And it was nice to have a nice uplifting ending with Sophia just really happy with everything she's doing. Sophia was very happy in this episode. I liked it a lot. I thought it was very well done, very well written, really great performances, a nice little bit of suspense about what the sculpture would ultimately end up looking like, and I rather enjoyed it. A really good episode, no complaints here. The artist was a really enjoyable episode of The Golden Girls.